Who do you believe, the Prime Minister or the self-confessed fraudster? Julia Gillard has taken aim at former Australian Workers' Union bagman Ralph Blewitt, saying she's happy for her word to be tested against his. And in a moment, I'll do just that when Ralph Blewitt is our guest. For the second time in 3 months, the Prime Minister has been forced to revisit her role in helping set up what she once described as a union slush fund for two now discredited AWU officials. She insists she did nothing wrong and again challenged anyone with hard evidence to come forward. Here's political editor Chris Ullman.
There's a spring in the step of most parliamentarians.
I plead with them to join the Xenophon Party.
Because both houses will rise for the year on Thursday.
Well, one thing I should say...
Hey Tony, mate, how are you? Prime Minister, good morning.
But goodwill evaporates when the Prime Minister and opposition leader meet, because this year a bad relationship has turned toxic. Today, again, the main game was bitterly personal as the coalition focused like a laser deep into Julia Gillard's past.
I refer to the Prime Minister's statement today that she provided legal advice to set up the AWU Workplace Reform Association.
In question is what happened 20 years ago when Julia Gillard was a lawyer with the Melbourne-based firm Slater and Gordon. The company then acted for the Australian Workers' Union. At the centre of the storm are these two men, union official Ralph Blewitt and branch secretary Bruce Wilson. They were accused of orchestrating a fraud where hundreds of thousands of dollars from developers was paid into a West Australian slush fund and then misappropriated. At the time, Julia Gillard was in a personal relationship with Bruce Wilson. She helped set up the fund, but has always categorically denied any wrongdoing.
These things have been cycled and recycled and re-recycled and re-recycled over 20 years. I did nothing wrong. That I should not dignify this.
In August, the Prime Minister tried to put all the questions about this chapter of her past to bed forever in an hour-long press conference.
I'm answering your questions now. If you've got questions, put them.
But the dogged coterie of people driving this story has kept it alight, and some of those come from within Labor's own ranks. So in order to deflate today's question time attack, the Prime Minister tried to get on the front foot by preempting it and framing it as a sign of an opposition out of puff and out of ideas.
Mr Abbott has led the Liberals to where they've got nowhere else to go except sleaze and smear.
There were lots of questions and many variations on several themes of this baroque, ancient affair.
If anybody has a piece of evidence that says I knowingly received money to which I was not entitled for my renovations, please feel free to get it out. If anybody's got it, it's only been 20 years.
Many of the questions coalesce around why Australian Workers' Union officials weren't told of the existence of the West Australian Slush Fund when they first began to raise the alarm about the activities of Bruce Wilson and Ralph Blewitt in 1995.
The two people I was dealing with were office bearers of the AWU. I'm therefore, I think, entitled to say the AWU, people who were office bearers of the AWU knew about it.
Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Questions about the Workplace Reform Association formed the thrust of the Coalition's question time assault.
Is the reason she did not open a file that it would have alerted her partners and the AWU to the existence of an unauthorised slush fund that received money for the benefit of Wilson and Blewitt?
This is bordering on the embarrassing now. To save the questions, let me assure her I didn't fake the moon landing. I wasn't responsible for the assassination of JFK. I didn't shove Harold Holt on a Chinese submarine just before she gets to those questions.
So, to date, after the combined efforts of Julia Gillard's enemies within and without, citizen vigilantes and teams of journalists, there is no smoking gun in any of this. There is one other issue worth noting, whether Ralph Blewitt was present when Julia Gillard witnessed witnessed a document giving Bruce Wilson power of attorney for him for buying a property in Melbourne. The Prime Minister says that boils down to a contest between two conflicting accounts.
I've witnessed thousands and thousands of documents over an 8-year legal career for clients, and I did that witnessing properly. So it's going to come down to Mr Blewitt's word against mine. Let me remind you who Mr Blewitt is. Mr Blewitt is a man who has publicly said he was involved in fraud. Mr Blewitt is a man who has sought immunity from prosecution. Mr Blewitt is a man who has fled Indonesia to avoid a police interview in relation to land fraud, although he denies wrongdoing in the case. Mr Blewitt says he owes money on another Asian land deal. Mr Blewitt admits to using the services of prostitutes in Asia. Mr Blewitt has published lewd and degrading comments and accompanying photographs of young women on his Facebook page. Mr Blewitt, according to people who know him, has been described as a complete imbecile, an idiot, a stooge, a sexist pig, a liar, and his sister has said he's a crook and rotten to the core. His word against mine. Make your mind up.